The galaxy had been at peace for centuries. Different species lived in their own sectors, maintaining their borders with respect and caution. But all that changed on a quiet morning when a strange message broke through the calm. It was unlike anything the aliens had ever encountered before. A transmission flashed on the command center screens of the Eutherian Alliance. The message was brief but shocking. It was a simple warning, yet it carried a weight that made every alien in the room stop what they were doing. The words were clear and sharp, without any emotion. Warning: human war vessel has breached the sector. The message was sent from a small vessel, no larger than an ordinary freighter. But the words sent a chill through the Eutherians. They had heard stories of humans, but they had always been distant rumors, whispers of a dangerous species from a far-off part of the universe. To the Eutherians, humans were nothing but myths. They were wild, unpredictable creatures, but their reputation was just a tale. Until now. Jarek, the Eutherian commander, stared at the screen in disbelief. His yellow eyes narrowed as he tried to make sense of what he was reading. The human vessel had crossed into the Eutherian sector, and that meant one thing: trouble. Jarek had fought in many wars, but the thought of facing humans left him uneasy. The humans have entered our space. Why? Jarek's voice was sharp. His mind raced with questions. Why would they send a single vessel into such a powerful alliance? Surely, they knew the risks. The Eutherians were one of the most powerful races in the galaxy, with advanced technology, fleets of warships, and a proud military history. Yet there was something about humans that felt different. The rumors about their fierce determination and cunning intelligence had always been difficult to believe. No one had ever encountered them in battle. "What do we do, Commander?" asked Isola, Jarek's second-in-command. Her voice was filled with doubt. She had heard the same stories, but they seemed like fantasy. Humans facing an entire sector with only one vessel. It didn't add up. Jarek turned away from the screen and walked toward the giant window of the command center. Outside, the stars twinkled, peaceful and calm. But his mind was filled with a storm of thoughts. He had never faced an enemy that had sent only one ship into a sector so heavily guarded. The humans' courage, or foolishness, was beyond understanding. "We need to gather more information. This cannot be a simple mistake. If they are truly human, then they must have a reason for this." Jarek's voice was steady, though his mind was far from calm. He motioned for Isola to contact the nearest outpost. "Send scouts. I want to know everything about this vessel. How many are aboard? What weapons do they carry? Are they alone, or is there a fleet hidden somewhere?" As Isola began typing the orders into the console, Jarek turned his thoughts to the human legend. The stories told of humans as fearless warriors who had conquered impossible odds. But could they really be so dangerous? He had heard of their battles, their wars, their ability to adapt and overcome. The Eutherians had always believed that strength came in numbers, but perhaps the humans were a different kind of enemy, one who didn't rely on numbers at all. Jarek felt a deep sense of unease. He had learned long ago that underestimating an enemy was a fatal mistake. The Eutherians had once faced a similar situation with a lesser-known race, and the results had been disastrous. A single ship, a single force, had broken through their defenses and left them reeling. He couldn't let that happen again. Not with humanity. Isola finished contacting the scouts and turned back to Jarek. "It's strange, Commander. Our sensors cannot detect any backup ships. The human vessel appears to be alone. There's no sign of a fleet." Jarek's frown deepened. The silence of space only made his thoughts grow louder. Why would they send just one ship? If the humans were truly a dangerous force, why risk it all on a single vessel? "It doesn't make sense," Jarek muttered to himself. "But we must prepare for the worst." He turned back to the command center. "Alert the fleet. We're going to need all our strength to face this. If the humans are truly here to test us, we'll show them just how wrong they are." As the Eutherians scrambled to prepare for whatever came next, The message on the screen remained. The human vessel had entered their sector, and now there was no turning back. The Euthrians could only wait and wonder. What did the humans want, and were they ready to face what came next? On board the human war vessel, Captain Sarah Hale stood in front of the large window, staring at the vast emptiness of space. The stars blinked peacefully in the distance, but she knew that calm wouldn't last. Her ship, the Resolute, was one of the most advanced war vessels in humanity's fleet, and it was now in the heart of enemy space. The mission had been clear: enter the Euthrian sector, deliver a message, and return. But as Sarah looked at the stars, she couldn't shake the feeling that things would not go as planned. No mission ever did. "Captain, we've entered the sector," reported Lieutenant James Carter, his voice calm but firm. He stood beside her, his eyes glued to the control panel. "We're getting a lot of strange readings from their fleet. They're watching us, but not attacking." Sarah nodded but didn't speak. She had expected the Euthrians to notice them quickly. After all, the Resolute wasn't exactly a small ship. Still, something didn't feel right. Why hadn't they attacked yet? "Keep the shields up. Stand by for any response," Sarah ordered, her voice steady, though her mind raced. She had heard the stories about the Euthrians, their powerful military, and their strict code of honor. But humanity had been preparing for this moment for years. They weren't the same weak species they once were. They had learned to survive, to fight, and to win. "Captain, we're receiving a communication," Lieutenant Carter said, his tone slightly tense. "It's from the Euthrian command." Sarah took a deep breath, preparing herself. She knew what this meant. They had been detected, and now the Euthrians were about to respond. But how would they react? Would they try to destroy the Resolute immediately? Or would they try to talk? She had no idea. She had studied the Euthrians, their history, and their military tactics, but nothing could have fully prepared her for this. "Put it through," she said. She turned to face the large screen on the wall. A few seconds passed, and then the image of an Euthrian officer appeared. He was tall, with glowing yellow eyes that seemed to pierce right through Sarah. His dark skin had a metallic sheen, a sign of his species' advanced biology. His uniform was decorated with silver armor, and his posture was rigid, proud. "I am Jarek, commander of the Euthrian fleet," the alien said in a voice that was calm but carried a dangerous edge. "You have entered our space. Explain your purpose, human." Sarah stood tall and met Jarek's gaze. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The fate of this mission, and possibly of humanity, rested on her next words. She had to be careful. The Euthrians were known for their pride, and they didn't take kindly to threats or insults. "We come in peace," Sarah said, her voice strong and unwavering. "We have no intention of causing harm to your people. Our mission is simple: to deliver a message." Jarek's eyes narrowed. "A message? From whom?" "From the Human Alliance," Sarah replied. "We have heard much about your species, and we wish to establish a relationship. But we are not here to beg for peace. We are here to show you what humanity is capable of." There was a long silence. Jarek studied her for a moment, his face unreadable. Sarah couldn't tell if he was considering her words or preparing to order the destruction of her ship. "You speak with confidence, human, but confidence will not save you here," Jarek said, his voice cold and measured. "What makes you believe that we would want anything to do with your kind?" Sarah's heart raced, but she didn't let it show. "Because we're not like other species," she said. "We fight for survival. We adapt. And when we face something bigger than us, we don't back down. We find a way to win." Jarek's eyes flickered with something. Was it curiosity? Or perhaps something darker? Sarah couldn't be sure. "We will see if you can back up your words," Jarek replied after a long pause. "Stay where you are. We will decide what to do with you." The screen went black. Sarah exhaled deeply, feeling the weight of his words settle in her chest. The Euthrians had not attacked yet, but that could change in an instant. She turned to Carter, who was watching her carefully. "What now, Captain?" Carter asked. Sarah looked at him, her expression hardening. "Now, we wait, and we prepare. If they decide to test us, we will show them what humanity is capable of. But if they want peace, we will be ready to negotiate." She turned and walked toward the command chair. The crew was waiting for her orders, and she would not let them down. She knew the risks. This was a dangerous game, but humanity had come too far to back down now. The Euthrians might be powerful, but the humans had something they didn't: determination. And that was something no fleet could ever take away. Back in the heart of the Euthrian command center, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Commander Jarek sat at the head of a long table surrounded by his top officers. The message from the human vessel still echoed in his mind. "We are not here to beg or ask for peace. We are here to show you what humanity is capable of." Jarek's yellow eyes flickered as he stared at the large screen in front of him, which displayed a live feed from the Resolute. The human vessel sat silently in space, its engines dimmed, waiting. It was a small ship by Euthrian standards, no larger than a civilian freighter, yet it had managed to breach the most heavily guarded sector in the galaxy. Jarek couldn't help but wonder, how had they done it? And more importantly, why had they sent only one ship? "I don't like this," murmured Lisola, his second in command. She stood beside him, her arms crossed, eyes fixed on the human ship. One ship against an entire fleet. That doesn't add up. They must be hiding something. Jarek nodded slowly, his sharp mind racing through possibilities. The Euthrians had encountered many species over the centuries, but none had ever been as bold, or as mysterious, as the humans. They had never sent a single ship into a well-guarded sector. It didn't make sense. They were either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. "Perhaps they have a fleet waiting nearby," said Corin, an experienced tactician who sat across from Jarek. His voice was low, but it carried a sense of certainty. "They are trying to make us lower our guard. Once we engage with their ship, the rest of their forces will strike." "No," Jarek said firmly, his voice cutting through the tension in the room. "I've been studying their movements for the past few hours. The human ship has no support. Our sensors would have detected any fleet, and we would have already engaged. This is something else. They are alone, and they are not here to attack. At least, not in the way we expect." Isola tilted her head. "Then what are they here for? What kind of message are they trying to send?" Jarek paused, his fingers tapping lightly on the table. The human captain's words had been clear. "We are here to show you what humanity is capable of." That phrase echoed in his mind. It was bold. It was defiant. But what did it mean? What did humanity have to show the Euthrians that would make them send a single ship into enemy territory? Could it be a test? Jarek asked quietly, his mind finally settling on the idea. A challenge. They could be testing us. Our strength, our resolve, our response. A heavy silence filled the room. The officers exchanged uncertain glances. The Euthrians were known for their strategic minds, but this was something they had never considered. A race sending only one ship to test another, especially in the heart of enemy space, was almost unthinkable. But why would they risk it all? Corin asked. If they have no backup, no fleet, then they are risking everything. It would be madness. Jarek leaned back in his chair, his eyes still fixed on the screen. He thought about the humans he had read about. Their wars, their survival against overwhelming odds, their ability to adapt to almost any situation. The humans had always been an unpredictable species. Their history was full of stories of small groups overcoming large, powerful enemies. Could it be that the human ship wasn't a mistake? Was it possible that they had come here with a plan far more dangerous than anyone could imagine? They are not fools, Jarek said slowly. They may be small in number, but they have always fought for survival. What if this is not a test of our strength? What if they are trying to show us something else, something that goes beyond mere war? Isola frowned. You mean their technology? They want us to see how advanced they are. Jarek shook his head. No, it's not about technology. It's about their will. Their ability to fight when they have nothing left to lose. They're not here to fight a traditional battle. They're here to show us that they will do whatever it takes to win, even if it means taking extreme risks. The room fell silent again, each officer lost in thought. The idea was unsettling. If humanity was really here to prove their resolve, then this could turn into something very different from a simple conflict. Jarek's mind raced through countless scenarios, none of which made him feel any more confident. I believe they will push us to our limits, Jarek continued. They will provoke us, test us, and see if we break under pressure. They don't need a fleet to do that. They only need our reaction. So, we don't attack yet? Asola asked, her voice uncertain. We wait. We wait, Jarek said firmly. But we must be ready for whatever they do. They will not play by our rules, and we must not underestimate them. I've fought many enemies in my time, but these humans, they are different. As the Euthrian officers continued their discussions, one thing became clear. They had never faced an enemy like this. The humans were not here to fight a war the way any other species would. They were here to test the Euthrians, to push them to their limits, and to show them that humanity was a force that could never be ignored. The question now was, would the Euthrians be able to handle it, or would they fall into the trap the humans had set for them? The silence in the Euthrian command center was deafening. For hours, Jarek and his officers had waited, watched, and discussed the human vessel. Every sensor was focused on the small ship, but it had not moved. It simply hovered in place, its lights flickering softly against the black backdrop of space. The humans were waiting. And the Euthrians were waiting too. Jarek stood before the large window, staring out at the human ship. He had prepared for this moment for days, but now that it had come, he felt no closer to understanding the true nature of the humans. What were they planning? What did they want? Commander, Isola's voice broke through his thoughts. She stood beside him, her posture tense, her yellow eyes locked on the screen. The human ship is still not moving. Should we contact them first, or wait for them to initiate? Jarek's gaze never wavered from the ship. We will contact them, but we will be careful. I don't believe they are here to attack us, but we cannot afford to make any mistakes. He turned to his officers. Prepare the communication channels. Send a standard greeting. Let them know we are ready to speak. The crew worked quickly, their fingers flying over the control panels as they set up the communication. The moment felt heavy, each second stretching longer than the last. Jarek's mind raced. He knew the risks. First contact with any species could be a dangerous affair. One wrong move, and everything could spiral out of control. Finally, the screen in front of Jarek flickered to life. The face of Captain Sarah Hale appeared, her expression calm and confident, yet there was a certain wariness in her eyes. She was not like the Euthrians, who wore their pride on their sleeves. No, the human captain had a quiet strength about her, a kind of inner power that Jarek could sense even from across the stars. I am Commander Jarek of the Euthrian fleet, he began, his voice strong and steady. We have been waiting for your communication. You have entered our sector without permission. Explain your purpose. Sarah's eyes flickered for a moment, but she didn't hesitate. She had expected the challenge, and she was ready. I am Captain Sarah Hale of the human vessel Resolute, she replied, her voice cool and clear. We come in peace. We are here to deliver a message from the Human Alliance. Jarek studied her carefully. Her words were simple, but there was something more behind them. The humans had not come to beg or ask for peace. They were here with a purpose. But what was that purpose? What did they want from the Euthrians? We are not here to fight. Sarah continued, her eyes locked with Jarek's. We know your people are powerful, but we have no intention of challenging you. We only wish to show you what humanity is capable of. Jarek felt a flicker of something in his chest. Curiosity, perhaps, or doubt. The humans spoke of peace, but their words felt like a challenge. They had come to show the Euthrians something. But what could they possibly show? The Euthrians had never met a species that could stand up to them. "And what exactly is it that you think you can show us?" Jarek asked, his voice careful but firm. Sarah's expression didn't change. "You may not believe it now, but humanity is a force to be reckoned with. We may not have the numbers, but we have something that sets us apart from every other species in this galaxy. The will to survive. And we never stop fighting, even when the odds are against us." The words hit Jarek harder than he expected. The humans were proud. They had been through wars, battles, and struggles. Jarek knew that much from the stories. But to hear it from one of them, so confidently, was a different thing altogether. He had been prepared for arrogance. He had been prepared for war. But this was something new. "We are not interested in your wars or your survival tactics," Jarek said, trying to maintain his authority. "We have heard the stories of your species, but you have entered a place where you are not welcome. Why should we even listen to your message?" Sarah's eyes didn't waver. "Because, Commander, whether you like it or not, humanity is here. We are not going away. And we want to prove that we are more than just a species to be ignored. You don't have to accept us as equals, but we want you to understand that we will not be treated like outsiders." There was a moment of silence, a heavy pause that seemed to stretch for eternity. Jarek's mind raced as he considered her words. The human captain's confidence was undeniable. She wasn't threatening, but there was a fire in her words, a fire that he had seen before in the eyes of warriors who had nothing left to lose. "We will consider your message," Jarek said, his voice more thoughtful now. "But know this, Captain Hale. You are not the only ones with strength. The Euthrians will not bow to anyone." "We're not asking you to bow," Sarah replied. "We're asking you to understand that humans will not back down. And we hope that one day we can stand side by side, not as enemies, but as allies." Jarek stared at her for a moment longer, his mind still working through the weight of her words. For the first time, he wondered if the humans might truly be different. Perhaps they weren't here to fight. Perhaps they were here to test the Euthrians, to prove that they could not be dismissed so easily. As the communication ended, Jarek sat back in his chair, deep in thought. This had been only the first contact, but it had already made him question everything he had believed about humanity. The Resolute was just one ship, but its captain had shown him something far more dangerous than any weapon: conviction. The Euthrians had faced many enemies, but they had never faced a species like this, and Jarek knew one thing for sure. This encounter was only just beginning. The tension in the Euthrian command center was thick. Jarek's mind raced as he watched the human vessel, Resolute, hovering in the distance. The conversation with Captain Sarah Hale had left him with more questions than answers. The humans were not like any species the Euthrians had encountered before. They didn't beg for peace, and they didn't threaten with weapons. They simply spoke of their will to survive. "We've never seen anything like them," Corin said, his voice breaking the heavy silence. He stood beside Jarek, his eyes fixed on the screen that showed the human ship. Jarek didn't respond immediately. He knew the humans were different, but different didn't always mean better. The Euthrians had survived countless wars and challenges, and they had always come out on top. But this time, something felt different. "They're testing us," Jarek finally said, his voice low and steady. The human captain made it clear. "She isn't just here to talk. She's here to show us something." Isola, his second in command, raised an eyebrow. "A test? What kind of test?" Jarek didn't have an immediate answer. He could only guess. The humans had provoked the Euthrians, but not in the way one would expect. They weren't attacking. They weren't threatening. They were simply standing their ground, waiting for the Euthrians to make a move. "Whatever they're doing, we need to respond," Jarek said firmly. "Prepare the fleet, but remember, we don't make the first move. Let them show us what they have." The officers nodded and quickly got to work. Jarek stood in front of the large window, his mind still processing the situation. The Euthrians were a proud race, and they didn't take kindly to being challenged. But something about this human captain, this Sarah Hale, made him feel uneasy. She wasn't afraid. That much was clear. And that made her dangerous. Meanwhile, aboard the Resolute, Captain Sarah Hale sat in her command chair, her eyes fixed on the large view screen. The Euthrian fleet was vast. Dozens of warships, all lined up in a formation that showed the might of their species. Yet they didn't attack. They waited. The silence was almost unbearable. "Captain, we've been waiting for nearly 3 hours," Lieutenant Carter said, his voice laced with concern. "Should we do something? They're just sitting there." Sarah took a deep breath and leaned back in her chair. She understood his frustration. They had sent the message, and now they were stuck in a waiting game. But this was the plan. She knew the Euthrians wouldn't respond immediately. They would need time to decide how to deal with humanity. "We wait," Sarah said simply. "They're not going to make the first move. Not yet." Carter didn't seem convinced. "But Captain, if they don't attack, how do we know they're taking us seriously? They could be thinking we're just trying to bluff." Sarah turned her chair to face him. "It's not about bluffing. It's about showing them that we're not afraid, that we're not going anywhere." Just then, the ship's sensors beeped, signaling a change in the Euthrian fleet's formation. The Euthrians were moving. "Captain, they're advancing," reported Ensign Martinez. "Their ships are aligning in a new formation. It looks like they're preparing for something." Sarah stood up, her eyes narrowing. "This is it," she said quietly. "They're going to make their move." The crew went silent, watching the screen as the Euthrian ships moved closer, their weapons slowly powering up. But even as the Euthrians approached, Sarah didn't give the order to prepare for battle. She knew this wasn't a full-on attack. It was a test, a challenge. "Captain," Carter said, his voice tight with tension, "should we prepare for combat?" "No," Sarah replied, her voice calm and confident. "We're not here to fight. We're here to show them what humanity is capable of. Stand by. Let's see what they do." Back on the Euthrian ships, Jarek watched the human vessel closely. The Resolute wasn't preparing for battle. In fact, it seemed almost calm. The humans were waiting for him to make the first move. They weren't backing down, but they weren't challenging him either. It was a strange kind of defiance, a refusal to show fear, no matter what the Euthrians did. "Send a signal," Jarek ordered. "Tell them to prepare for testing. They've wanted to prove themselves, and now they will." The signal was sent, and Jarek's voice echoed across the communication channel. "Human vessel, Resolute, we will test your resolve. Prepare yourselves. This is your final warning. Show us what humanity is capable of." Sarah's eyes flickered as she heard the message. The challenge had come. The Euthrians were ready to push them. It was time to prove that humanity could stand strong. "Status report," Sarah said, her voice steady. "How long do we have?" 2 minutes until we are within range," Carter replied. "Should we prepare the shields?" "No," Sarah said firmly. "Not yet. Let them come closer. We're not here to fire first. Remember our message." The Resolute stood its ground, ready for whatever the Euthrians might throw at them. Every officer aboard the ship knew what was at stake. This was no longer about a simple message. This was about showing the Euthrians that humanity would not be intimidated. As the Euthrians closed in, Jarek waited for the moment of truth. He had seen many species in his time, but this one, these humans, were something new. They had shown strength, resolve, and a willingness to stand firm even when the odds were against them. Finally, as the Euthrian ships were almost in range, Jarek gave the order. "Fire." The first shot was fired from the Euthrian fleet, a bolt of energy that hurtled through space toward the Resolute. But as it approached, Sarah's hand hovered over the control panel. She had a choice: to fight back, to defend her ship, or to stand her ground and take the hit. She knew what she had to do. The moment was approaching. Jarek stood in the Uthrian command center, his eyes fixed on the screen showing the human ship. The Resolute had not fired back. It was a calculated decision, and one that made Jarek uneasy. The humans were unpredictable, but they had proven one thing: they would not show fear. Jarek had given the order to fire, expecting the humans to react as any other species would. He expected them to fight, to defend themselves, to prove their strength. But the humans didn't. Instead, they waited. The energy bolt shot through space, lighting up the void with its deadly power. It sped toward the Resolute, the target clear and unprotected. But something unexpected happened. As the bolt neared the human ship, it stopped. Mid-flight, the energy seemed to dissolve, scattering into a harmless cloud of particles before it reached the Resolute. Jarek blinked, his sharp eyes narrowing in disbelief. The energy should have hit the human ship with a devastating impact. But it didn't. The humans had somehow neutralized it before it could even strike. What just happened? Isola asked, her voice filled with confusion. Jarek didn't answer immediately. He stared at the screen, trying to process what he had just witnessed. The Resolute was still there, untouched, its shields holding strong. No signs of damage, no sign of fear. A voice echoed through the communication channel, cutting through the tension in the room. It was Captain Hale. "Commander Jarek," she said calmly, "I believe it's time we showed you what humanity is truly capable of." Jarek's heart raced. The words sent a shiver down his spine. What did she mean? How had they done that? No one, no species, had ever been able to stop an energy weapon like that without massive technology at their disposal. "Explain," Jarek demanded, his voice steady but filled with suspicion. Sarah's image appeared on the screen, her expression serious, but her eyes glinted with something else. Something Jarek couldn't quite place. "What you just saw wasn't magic, Commander. It was humanity. Our technology may not be as advanced as yours in some areas, but when it comes to innovation and resourcefulness, we can do things that no one expects." Jarek felt a mix of surprise and frustration. The humans had always seemed like an underdog species, small, weak in comparison to the mighty Uthrians. But now, Jarek was beginning to understand. The Resolute wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of humanity's ability to adapt, to survive, and to overcome any challenge. "Tell me how you did it," Jarek said, his voice cold. Sarah leaned forward slightly, her gaze steady. "What you saw was our energy redirection system. It's a technology that allows us to absorb and disperse energy, redirecting it harmlessly. We've spent years developing it. It's not perfect, but it's one of our many innovations." Jarek absorbed her words, his mind racing. The idea of redirecting energy in real time was something he had never considered. The Uthrians were experts in technology, but humanity had something else, an ability to push the boundaries of what was possible, to find solutions even in the most dangerous situations. "Impressive," Jarek said, his tone betraying a hint of respect. "But this doesn't change anything. You are still an uninvited guest in our space." Sarah didn't flinch. "I understand. But think about this, Commander. You could destroy us now, if you wanted to. You have the power. But the question is, will you? Or will you allow us to prove that humanity is not a threat, but a force that can be trusted?" The words hung in the air like a challenge. Jarek was silent for a moment, his gaze locked on Sarah's image. He had never encountered a species that would willingly challenge the Uthrians with such confidence, let alone offer a chance for peace. The humans didn't cower or beg. They stood tall, unafraid of the Uthrian might. "I'm still not convinced," Jarek said finally, but his voice was softer now. "What else do you have to show me?" Sarah's expression didn't change. "We have one more thing, Commander. Something that will prove our resolve." Jarek's curiosity deepened. The human captain wasn't finished. He could sense it in her eyes. She had something else in store, something that would reveal even more about the human's true strength. "I'm listening," Jarek said. Sarah motioned to someone off-screen, and within moments, a new image appeared. This time, it was a map of the galaxy. Jarek's eyes narrowed as he studied the map. He recognized the sector where the Resolute had come from. But what was this? The map showed not just the human-controlled areas, but also small, scattered systems marked in red. "These red zones," Jarek asked, his voice cautious. "What are they?" Sarah's face grew serious. "These are the remnants of human colonies that have been attacked, destroyed, and abandoned. Some by hostile forces, others by natural disasters. But we survived. We adapted. And we rebuilt." Jarek's mind raced as he processed the information. These weren't just random locations. These were places where the humans had faced overwhelming odds and had come out stronger. "We don't ask for pity," Sarah continued. "We don't need anyone's sympathy. But we want you to understand that we are survivors. We have been through hardships that would have destroyed other species, yet we continue to fight. And we will continue to fight until the very end." Jarek was silent, his gaze fixed on the map. He had known about some of humanity's struggles, but seeing it laid out like this made him realize just how resilient they were. The humans had faced destruction, loss, and yet they had risen from the ashes time and time again. He looked back at Sarah, a new understanding in his eyes. "I see now," he said quietly. "Your species is not as weak as we once believed. You are a force to be reckoned with." Sarah nodded, her expression softening. "That's all we've ever wanted you to see, Commander. We are here to show you that humanity is not a threat to be crushed. We are a force that, if given the chance, could stand beside you." Jarek took a deep breath, his mind still processing the revelation. The humans weren't just testing the Eutherians. They were showing them who they truly were: survivors, innovators, and fighters. And for the first time, Jarek wondered if maybe, just maybe, humanity could be more than just a news ink. The Eutherian fleet hovered just outside the human ship, the Resolute. Jarek stood in the command center, his hands clasped behind his back, his gaze fixed on the view screen. The humans had surprised him in ways he hadn't expected. They weren't the weak, helpless species he'd been taught to believe they were. They had proven themselves to be resourceful, innovative, and most importantly, they had shown resilience beyond anything Jarek had ever seen. Sarah Hale had done what no other species had ever done. She had made him question everything he knew. And now, after all the tests, all the challenges, there was one final question. Could the Eutherians trust the humans? The silence in the command center was broken by the voice of Isola, his second-in-command. "Commander Jarek, Captain Hale is requesting another communication. Shall I open the channel?" Jarek's eyes remained on the screen. "Yes. Let's hear what she has to say." Moments later, Sarah's face appeared on the screen. She looked calm, but her eyes betrayed a glint of hope. She had waited for this moment, just as Jarek had. It was time to decide. "Commander Jarek," Sarah said, her voice steady, "I know the Eutherians don't trust us yet. And I understand that. You've seen what we can do, but I know that trust takes time. But I am asking you to consider something. An alliance." Jarek's brow furrowed. "An alliance?" His voice was guarded. "You expect us to join forces with you after everything that has happened?" Sarah nodded. "Yes, Commander. I know it's not an easy request, but I believe humanity has something to offer the Eutherians, just as I believe you have something to offer us. Together, we can do more than just survive. We can thrive. The galaxy is full of dangers that no one species can face alone. But together, we can be stronger. We can face those threats head-on." Jarek's mind raced. He had never imagined such an offer. Eutherians had always prided themselves on their strength. An alliance was something they had never needed. Until now. "Why should we trust you?" Jarek asked, his tone still wary. "You've shown us your strength, but we don't know what else you're capable of. What's to stop you from turning on us once we're no longer useful?" Sarah's eyes softened and her voice grew earnest. "I understand your hesitation, but let me make one thing clear. Humanity does not turn on those who stand with us. We fight to protect those we care about. If we form this alliance, we will be committed. We will stand with the Eutherians, just as you stand with us." Jarek considered her words carefully. He had seen the humans face incredible odds and survive. He had watched as they handled challenges that would have broken most species. But was that enough? Could an alliance with humans truly be beneficial? "We are a proud species," Jarek said, still unsure. "And we do not form alliances lightly. Our people have faced countless enemies alone. We've never needed help before." Sarah didn't hesitate. "And that's exactly why this alliance is so important. The galaxy is changing. New threats are emerging. Ones that even the Eutherians may not be able to face alone. You've seen our strength, but we've also seen your power. Together, we can be the force that the galaxy needs. We don't need to be enemies. We can be partners." Jarek's mind was torn. He had never imagined standing side by side with the humans, but the more he listened, the more he realized that perhaps this was the way forward. The Eutherians had always been strong, but the universe was vast, and there were dangers beyond what they had faced before. It was possible that an alliance with the humans could provide something they couldn't achieve alone. He turned to his officers, his eyes scanning the room. They were waiting for his decision, and he knew that whatever he chose, it would change the course of Eutherian history. Lisola spoke first. "Commander, I've seen what the humans are capable of. They've proven themselves to be more than just another species. They've shown that they're willing to fight for what they believe in, just as we do. Perhaps it's time we consider the possibility of joining forces." Corin, who had been silent until now, nodded. "I agree. The humans have something we don't have, a willingness to adapt. If we join them, we could learn a lot, and together, we could become unstoppable." Jarek listened carefully. His officers were right. This was a turning point. He could refuse the offer and continue down the path of isolation, or he could take a chance and form an alliance that could change everything. He looked back at the screen, meeting Sarah's gaze. "You make a compelling case, Captain Hale, but the Eutherians have always stood alone. It is difficult to imagine a future where we share our strength with another species." Sarah's voice was quiet, but full of conviction. "I understand, Commander, but think about the future. Think about the kind of galaxy we want to leave behind. An alliance with humanity is not just about surviving. It's about thriving together. It's about building something stronger than either of us could do alone." Jarek took a deep breath. This was a difficult decision, but it was clear that the universe was changing. The Eutherians could not face the future alone. He finally nodded. "Very well," he said, his voice steady. "We will join you. An alliance between the Eutherians and humanity. Together, we will face whatever challenges the galaxy throws at us." A smile crossed Sarah's face, and for the first time, Jarek saw a flicker of relief in her eyes. She had done it. She had convinced the Eutherians to stand with her. "Thank you, Commander," Sarah said, her voice full of gratitude. "This is the beginning of something great." Jarek looked out at the fleet, his thoughts turning to the future. The Eutherians had always been a force to be reckoned with, but now, with humanity by their side, they could be even greater. Together, they would face whatever the galaxy had in store, united as allies.